Hello from Alexandria.
An ancient megacity of 500,000 people, the economic and cultural center of the Mediterranean. It was a true gate for Hellenism, Romanism, but also for Christianity, to Egypt, to Africa and the Middle East. The second city of the empire. Proud, rebellious and aware of its past glory, Alexandria constantly competed with Rome. However, it wasn't an equal struggle, and the conflict between the two cities ultimately led to its doom. But what remains of Roman Alexandria? Today I'll show you the ruins of Kom El Dikka in the very center of the city. But first we'll visit the Serapeum. Let's go! On this rocky plateau, the highest point of the city, once stood the holiest sanctuary of Greco-Roman Egypt. Today it's a peaceful place, a safe refuge, amid the noisy and bustling streets of Alexandria, quite close to the Catacombs of Kom El Dikka, which I showed you last time. It was likely Ptolemy III Euergetes who built the Serapeum of Alexandria, the national sanctuary of the Ptolemaic supreme deity, Serapis, as well as of Isis and her son, Harpocrates, that is, Horus the child. The temple was significantly expanded, most likely during the reign of Hadrian. Before us, one of the city's symbols, the so-called Pompey's Pillar, of course built not by Pompey, but by a living 400 years later, Emperor Diocletian, who built it at the end of the 3rd century. It's a true giant, even by Egyptian and Roman standards. It's a granite monolith over 20 meters high. This 300-ton column was somehow placed on a 6-meter-high pedestal, also made of Aswan pink granite. The Corinthian capital at the top, made of grey granite, once supported a massive statue of Diocletian. It's amazing that one of the largest ancient columns in the world still stands in its original location, intact. Two likely Ptolemaic sphinxes found nearby have been placed on either side of the column already in modern times. The main and oldest temple in the complex was built to only house the statue, as it seems, a gigantic statue of Serapis. The temple itself wasn't very large, as according to ancient authors, the god's shoulders almost touched its walls. A bearded Serapis, with a grain measure jar on his head, sat on a throne, and next to him, vigilant Cerberus, the 3-headed canine guardian of the underworld. The 2nd century Christian philosopher Clement of Alexandria writes about the sculptor of the statue. He employed in its execution a mixture of various materials, for he had fillings of gold and silver and lead, and in addition tin, and of Egyptian stones not one was wanting. And there were fragments of sapphire and hematite and emerald and topaz. Having ground down and mixed together all these ingredients, he gave to the composition a blue color, whence the darkish hue of the image. Encouraged by the edict of Emperor Theodosius banning pagan cults in 391, Theophilus, Patriarch of Alexandria, took the cult objects found during the expansion of the temple and contemptuously paraded them in the street, exposing them to ridicule. Riots ensued, in which some Christians died. Taking refuge in the Serapeum, the pagans fortified it against attack, forcing captured Christians to offer sacrifices to the gods there and torturing them if they refused. The riot was reported to the emperor, who declared the slain Christians martyrs. The defenders barricaded inside were to be pardoned, but the temple itself had to be destroyed. When the imperial decree was read, the Christians, shouting with joy, rushed to the temple. However, the sight of the statue was said to have intimidated them. At the patriarch's urging, one of his followers dared to strike the statue first, in the face. Everyone screamed in terror, but divine revenge didn't come. Emboldened, they cut off the deity's head, and a swarm of mice supposedly emerged from the empty hole. The head was then dragged triumphantly through the city on ropes, just as over 300 years earlier the worshippers of Serapis had dragged Mark the Evangelist through the streets of Alexandria, by the neck, with ropes. Saint Mark, founder of the first church in Egypt. Eventually, the mob burned the remains of the statue right before the eyes of the grim pagans. At the southeastern end of the complex, there are still underground rooms that have housed the temple library, known as the Daughter Library, since at least the beginning of the 3rd century. It contained copies of the original scrolls, and perhaps even originals previously stored in the destroyed Great Library of Alexandria. At the end of the 19th century, a diorite statue of Apis was found here, the sacred bull of Memphis, identified with Serapis. We're looking now at its copy. Mysteries in honor of the Alexandrian Triad were to be performed in these interiors. Patriarch Theophilus ultimately ordered the Serapeum burned, along with the remnants of the Library of Alexandria's collections stored here. This was the end of the Serapeum, a magnificent complex that the 4th century Roman historian, Ammianus Marcellinus, compared to the Roman temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. Quote, "The abbeysides in the city temples pompous with lofty roofs, conspicuous among them the Serapeum, with which, though feeble words merely belittle it, yet is so adorned with extensive columned halls, with almost breathing statues and a great number of other works of art, that, next to the Capitolium, with which revered Rome elevates herself to eternity, the whole world beholds nothing more magnificent." This is one of the last accounts of the Serapeum. It wasn't converted into a church, but the hated symbol was destroyed. We can admire its scarce fragments along the tourist path. Numerous sources tell us that, despite persecution, Serapis was actively worshipped in Alexandria as late as the 5th century. The Serapeum was once towering over the largest and oldest part of the city, Rakotis, a former pharaonic fishing village that was incorporated into Alexandria as its largest quarter, inhabited primarily by Egyptians. Now we're heading 1.5 kilometers northeast to ancient Brucheium, inhabited by Greeks, the representative part of the city. We're in the heart of modern Alexandria, in Kom El Dikka district, home to the city's largest archaeological site. Excavations and reconstruction began here in 1960 by Professor Kazimierz Michałowski, and decades of work conducted primarily by Poles led to the opening of this archaeological park to the public in 2017. The extensive, nearly 40,000 square meters site is a truly unique for Egypt example of architecture and urban planning during late Roman times. The theatre and auditoriums, baths, cisterns, houses and colonnaded porticos are some of Alexandria's greatest tourist attractions today. In the first 3 centuries AD, this entire area was occupied by the lavish residences of wealthy Alexandrians. Then came the most devastating and tragic for Alexandria, the 3rd century. Following political turmoil, rebellions and bloody pacifications carried out by the Roman emperors, the city was in ruins. After driving the forces of the self-proclaimed Palmyrene Empire out of the city in 272, Emperor Aurelian took terrible revenge on the treacherous and disloyal Alexandrians, devastating the Greek quarter, including the heart of the city, Agora, which never regained its former glory. Still crucial to the empire, the city needed a new center. This was established here on the site of ruined early Roman villas. In their place, public buildings began to be constructed here in the 4th century. Before us, a beautiful although small theatre with a 13-tiered marble cavea, that is the sitting section, surrounded by a colonnade. This is the only Roman theatre found in Egypt so far. Most likely it originally functioned as an Odeon for musical performances. In the early 6th century, following a reconstruction that gave the auditorium a horseshoe shape and covered the building itself with a dome, the theatre began to function as the auditorium maximum of the nearby academic complex. As a large academy was located here, called by archaeologists the Oxford of late antiquity. It's the only ancient university discovered so far in the entire Mediterranean.
Although the golden age of Alexandria was long gone in the late antiquity, it remained the center of education and science in the entire Mediterranean.
So Alexandria remained not only a huge and significant hub of the Roman Empire, but also its main intellectual center. The colonnade is the remnant of a monumental white portico, along which stood a series of auditoriums, which must have held particular significance given their unique location in the heart of the city. Together with the nearby baths, the complex must have been considered the center of social and cultural life, the new center of the city, replacing the Ptolemaic and early Roman agora, and most likely the gymnasium already ruined by that time. Archaeologists point to the turn of the 5th and 6th centuries as the probable time of construction of the complex. Most likely it was considerably expanded in the second half of the 6th century, which may be related in some way to the closure of the famous Academy of Athens in 529 AD. Could it be that Athenian teachers found refuge in Alexandria? Stone benches were arranged similarly to those in theatres, allowing students to see each other and the teacher, who sat on the thronos, a chair placed on a stone podium. As many as 22 auditoriums were discovered along the portico. This number of classrooms could have provided comfortable conditions for up to 600 students. Education in ancient times took place in a variety of settings, primarily in existing public buildings such as temples, baths, gymnasiums, and private homes. Elementary lessons could have taken place outdoors, on streets or under trees. However, higher education required more permanent structures, that ensured appropriate standards and relative isolation from the outside world. The university provided education in all the fundamental fields of paideia, rhetoric, law, philosophy, and medicine, for which Alexandria was particularly famous. It seems that this university was rivaled only by the no longer existing massive complex in Constantinople established by Theodosius in 425, with its 30 auditoriums. These were the great predecessors of medieval European universities. The core of the new urban project, implemented on a large scale from the 4th century onward, was a complex of grand imperial baths, surrounded by monumental colonnades. It almost adjoined the university and included spacious bathing halls that could accommodate hundreds of daily users, swimming pools, gymnasiums for sport exercises, and public latrines. An extensive system of furnaces, heated water supplied from nearby cisterns. All that remains of the grand complex are bleak brick walls, granite columns, and arched vaults of underground passages. Passing the baths, we see the domestic quarter, which we're going to explore, but first, a moment of rest from the summer Egyptian sun. All around we see remnants of dense Byzantine-era buildings, new, much smaller and more modest, often multi-story, multi-family houses. They replaced the earlier luxurious residences, which archaeologists discovered here, as well as other early Roman houses and workshops dating back to before the 3rd century. Fragments of frescoes and mosaic floors, often very well preserved, date back to this period, as do floors made of pieces of marble, alabaster, and other stones. These can be admired today in a pavilion built specifically for this purpose. This mosaic shelter was built over the Villa of the Birds, as archaeologists have called it. It's the best preserved house, or rather a fragment of the floor of a house once decorated with paintings, sculptures, and colorful mosaics with geometric, floral, and figurative motifs. These scarce remains best illustrate the city's splendor and the wealth of its inhabitants. The mosaics here are a mix of white, yellow, grey, and black marble and limestone pieces, as well as multicolored glass paste and delicate glass beads for the bird's eyes. As we can see, they charmingly depict a duck, a quail, a parrot, a peacock, 2 doves drinking from a cup, and a purple gallinule. They date to the turn of the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Mosaics found in other places in Kom El Dikka are also exhibited here. This Greek inscription means "you are welcome," and most likely was placed at the entrance to the residence. A cross is visible in the center of this colorful geometric composition, but it's not a religious symbol, as above the cross on a ceramic oval we see an image of Dionysus Bacchus holding a cup, the god of fertility, wildness, wine, and theater. The mosaic was discovered near the theatre and also dates from the turn of the 2nd and 3rd centuries. In Kom El Dikka, there's also a small, open-air museum. During underwater excavations in Alexandria's eastern harbour, where the famous lighthouse once stood, several dozen sphinxes, a few obelisks and columns were discovered. Some of these date back to the New Kingdom, for example from the reign of Ramses the Great. They were usurped by the Ptolemies to adorn one of the 7 wonders of the world, or the neighbouring temple of Isis Pharia, protectress of the lighthouse of Alexandria. The temple on the island has never been found, although it's attested in ancient Roman sources. Magnificent Alexandria. These statues remind us that at the time of the Roman conquest, when in 31 BC it became the capital of the new Roman province, Egypt, Alexandria was already exactly 300 years old. For 300 years it was the capital of the powerful Ptolemaic kingdom. And although so many Ptolemaic monuments have survived in Egypt, here in Alexandria there are practically none, except for a few Hellenistic tombs. And it's no wonder. The city has always been populous, full of life, constantly evolving and developing. The final decline of Roman Alexandria came in the 7th century, first with the Persian invasion and later with the Arabs. The grand public buildings were abandoned and devastated. In later centuries, the baths and university became a burial ground and a vast garbage dump. It's truly a miracle that this vast area in the center of Alexandria, the Kom El Dikka Archaeological Park, was reclaimed from the modern city by history. I sometimes wonder how many magnificent monuments still lie beneath these busy streets. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy our historical adventures and want to help me continue this, please join my Patreon community, link below the video. Please like, comment and share my video with your friends. I'd like to thank all the supporters of my channel, especially my dear patrons. Thanks to you, I can create this content. And if you're new here, I recommend my podcast about ancient Egyptian beliefs and history, where I explore in detail the cosmology and myths of ancient Egypt. Last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to be up to date with new episodes. Thank you and see you on another ancient site.